Welcome back to Stooge Stream. This is another episode of Is It Worth Playing? I'm your host, the Stooge, and this time around we're going to look at Lords of Thunder. We'll do what we always do and pull it apart, put it back together, and then have a look to see, is it worth playing? What is Lords of Thunder? It's a medieval side-scrolling shooter, very much in the style of something like R-Type or Gradius, or G-Darius. Haha, I found another one. But rather than being a space shooter, as I said, it's a medieval themed shooter, so it looks and feels very different to its competition in a number of respects. Let's talk about its graphic style. Firstly, it's quite bright and colourful and pops off the screen. Red Entertainment did a great job of creating a game that looks and feels very different from everything else it was competing with in the same space. True, it's still a side-scrolling shooter, but it does stand out. A lot of the other games you see in these types of either vertical or horizontal shooters are your 1943s, your plain, normal planey type shooters, or your space shooters. That's pretty much it. And every now and then you get the cute-em-ups as well, of course. I won't forget the cute-em-ups. But before Lords of Thunder, there wasn't a great amount of variation. Now, with Lords of Thunder, developers know you can do anything you want. And we got a whole lot of different games that came out of this style of gameplay after Lords of Thunder. But before we get to that, let's go back and have the talk about the gameplay itself. It again distinguishes itself from its competition from being more than just your average side-scrolling shooter. In this, you pick one of four armors, being your wind, fire, water, earth, so an elemental armor that all have different attack styles and different power-ups. So as you power up your character, depending on which of the four elements you chose, so for instance, fire starts with just your basic little fireballs, and by the end has these huge, massive spreads that covers the entire screen, both behind and in front of you. Whereas your wind character has tiny little lightning attacks to start with, and by the end has a huge lightning spread that covers the screen in front of him, but very little defense behind. So every single one of the armors plays differently. Now they're important because at the beginning of each level, you get to purchase power-ups. Now you can purchase health, you can purchase weapon power-ups, you can purchase bombs. These are your typical things that you would be purchasing in a shooter that has a shop. But to vary it up a little bit, you can also purchase what's called an elixir, which means if your health gets to 0, you automatically get a new health bar. You can also purchase continues, you can purchase shields, all sorts of cool little stuff to vary up the gameplay, but you will actually need these as well because the gameplay style is a little bit different. In this, you power up everything first, you start the level super OP, wiping everything out, and as you take hits, gradually your power level comes down. Like most shooters, when you build up, you get your special power up, you take a hit, all of a sudden you're back to your normal shot. Kind of works like that, except for the fact that you actually have a power gauge. So it's not a single hit that knocks you back. This makes it a lot more console-y and less arcadey like a lot of the other shooters. You can take a few hits before your power level starts dropping, and then eventually your power level is going to drop back to its basic shot and its lowest level, and you're going to be out of health and die, and so on and so on. That's why it's important to make sure that you power yourself up to the maximum you possibly can before going into each encounter. There's 7 levels that you can choose in any order as well, with all different boss battles at the end of it. 3 levels of difficulty being normal, hard, and super. And there's differences within each level of difficulty, not just more enemies on screen, but other little subtle things that completely change the game up. So when you're playing it on normal, for instance, you'll find there's a huge amount of power-ups littering the screen when you kill a bunch of enemies. This will keep you at maximum power, or at least help you get back to maximum power before you get to the boss. When you get into hard mode, there's a lot less of them and a lot more enemies on screen, so all of a sudden you'll find that your power starts decreasing a lot quicker, your health starts decreasing a lot quicker because their shots do more damage, there's a hell of a lot more of them on screen, and there's less power-ups to pick up, which makes it a lot more difficult, makes it a lot more strategic. Whereas playing it on normal, it kind of still retains that arcadey shooter feel. You can get through it pretty easily. It's not too challenging. It's more just fun. When you get to hard, it's more of a strategic game. When you get to super, it's strap in, put a diaper on because shit's about to hit the fan. I love the shop in this as well. Being able to upgrade my character before I go into battle. And choosing the type of character I want too, with all four being distinctly different from each other, really varies up the gameplay and gives you a lot of replay value. In taking these levels in different orders, and trying the bosses in different orders, in trying different armors against the bosses to see what works best against each of them. There is a lot of variety in this title, though on normal mode you will probably get through it in about an hour with 4 characters there. You've got 4+ hours of gameplay just on normal mode, just to learn the game. And then once you've learnt the game, then you start going into hard, and all of a sudden it becomes a completely different beast and animal, and it's going to take a lot more hours even just to get through a single run. I really enjoyed how challenging the game was as well. It doesn't hold your hand through any point of the game. It pretty much throws you in the deep end and goes, learn. And that was one of the great things about games from the early 90s where this was released. Firstly in 1993 for the Turbo CD, and then in 1994 for the Sega CD, which is the version you're currently seeing on screen. These games didn't always hold your hands. They didn't always have tutorials. They kind of just threw you in and went, figure it out. And sometimes they were too tough and you didn't figure it out and you kind of just left that game alone, and sometimes they weren't. Or sometimes the game was so engaging that you wanted to figure it out. And I think Lords of Thunder kind of sits in that realm of a game that's so engaging when you get into hard mode. You want to keep coming back to figure it out and get better at it and learn the boss patterns and learn the game loop and just become a better player. Overall, I do think this is a game that, if you want to get into shoot 'em ups, is a great entry-level way into shoot 'em ups because of normal mode. And then hard mode is a great way to become a better shoot 'em up player, or shmup player if you'd prefer. One thing that I haven't really spoken about and kind of avoided up until this point was the soundtrack. Being on CD, especially in the early 90s, a lot of developers didn't take advantage of that. They kind of just threw older games onto the console and went, there you go. Maybe gave them a new coat of paint if you were lucky. You know, a lot of the HD upgrades we get these days of old games. But really, the CD wasn't utilized to its potential. This game does not have that problem because they utilized the CD to lay a massive 80s heavy metal soundtrack to the game that just sounds amazing. I want the soundtrack to this game. I'm going to be hunting it down today. This is going on my playlist. It's that good. It's 80s hairband heavy metal. It's cool. It really is. And it works so well with the game because the pumping beats and the pace of the music and the pace of the gameplay all blend in perfectly together. The soundtrack of this game is a real treat. And if you haven't heard it, if you're a gamer fan, this is definitely something you should experience. Really, really loved the soundtrack to this game. And I'm a 90s child myself, so this music was very nostalgic to me. It's stuff that you kind of heard this type of stuff on the radio in the early 90s. So yeah, I loved it. It really added to the experience, where in some games the music can be quite jarring or take you away from it or just not work with the game, which I think is even worse, when the music just doesn't work with the game at all. Like, it just doesn't fit when you have like a gothic architecture based game. Like, let's say it was Resident Evil, but you had club beats over it. It just doesn't fit the style, and that happens and it clashes, and you hear that in games today. Whereas, and back in the day, I'm not going to say that that wasn't the case, because it was. All the way back to the NES era, you'd hear music in games and go, well, that doesn't fit. That's kind of weird. This fits, man. It fits really, really well. They also took into account, for the sound effects, what the Mega Drive sounds like. So a lot of the effects are very chunky sounding. They're very grindy metal sounding. They're very lasery sounding, which is things that the Mega Drive could do really, really well. It's no secret that the sound chip in the Mega Drive wasn't as good as the sound chip in the Super Nintendo, which was developed by Sony, and they were sound engineers and architects at the time. Whereas what they had in the Mega Drive was very clunky and very, I even say punk rock. It sounded very punk rock to Nintendo's very orchestral full sound. But they took it, Hudson Soft and Red Entertainment took advantage of that, and it's the same for the PC Engine and the PC Engine Duo as well. It's a very chunky sounding console. So the sound effects work perfectly for the consoles that they were designed for, being the Sega CD, the Turbo CD, the PC Engine CD. Really well done. All in all, this is a great package. Now, by no means is this a cheap game. It's not easy to get, and especially being on systems that aren't readily available either. Like, let's be honest, I've got a PC Engine Duo RX. I had to get a friend to send me it from Japan when he went there on holidays because they're too expensive to import and they're almost impossible to get. Sega CD is the same. Having that monstrosity of a console, being a Genesis, a 32X, and a Sega CD set up just to play this game, what are the chances that all three of those pieces of hardware are going to be working properly and so on in this day and age? And normally I'm not a dude that's like, go do this, but in this case, because I want people to experience this game, I'd say you may even have to go to emulation to try this, but it's worth it because the quality of the game is amazing. I really, really wish that Hudson Soft was still around so we could get a compilation of some of their games from that era. Things like the Bonk's Adventure games that they're lost to time now because we're never going to see them again, or this. And I know we had some on the Wii Virtual Console, but come on, seriously? Like, I want a physical disc. Give me a physical PS4 disc or PS3 disc with a whole lot of Hudson Soft and Red Entertainment games on there, and the full trilogy of these games. There's more in the Thunder series. You've got Gates of Thunder. You've also got the Valkyrie games that are made by the same developer. Like, there's so many games that we don't have access to anymore. Snatcher's just disappeared as well. Like, Konami just doesn't want to re-release that for some reason. And a whole lot of things from that era I'd love to see come back, and this is definitely one of them. If you can play this in any way, I'd say get your hands on it. So is it worth playing? The answer is yes. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you get a chance to play this game. And if you did enjoy the episode, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps us out a lot here at Stooge Stream, and we really appreciate it. Comment below. Let me know what you think of Lords of Thunder. I'd love to know your opinion as well. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.